Gamers, welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about Ryse, Son of Rome. Ryse, Son of Rome is a third-person hack-and-slash action game with some very aesthetically detailed environments and backdrops that showed a lot of love in its creation. The game has a very cinematic camera feel to it with sequences and superb action throughout the game. The game itself, however, is a port from the original Xbox One version, but the PC version does include graphics settings and super sampling, showing that work has been put into the port of the PC version, especially in the graphics department. The story of the game starts off during an attack from the Celts, with the Roman general Marius defending the city against them. He proceeds to secure the city and escort the Roman Emperor Nero to a safe room, where he fires up some braziers and begins to tell the tale of how his adventure set off, leading to where he is now with the Emperor. Then the game starts with a flashback sequence when Marius was peacefully visiting his family when suddenly the barbarians attack, and thus begins the epic journey of vengeance, with Marius realizing that there are other forces at work than just the attack from the barbarians. The story of the game is well written and full of action and surprises. The actors honestly bring beauty into the game with some top-notch voice acting, lip sync, and facial expressions. You can feel the emotions from the characters as you play the game and see who is likable and detestable just through the details alone. Along with the acting, the music score goes great with the game's theme.
I intend to find out.
The graphics and background to this game are beautiful, and it shows the developers have put work into the environment of the maps, such as the small details when one takes a scenery glance at the ancient buildings, from the plant's growth, the rain dripping off the sides, the caves, and the wilderness, which are some example that really brings immersion to this game. Along with the details, there are some really nice backdrops to the game, but there were certain times, such as the war sequence of the game when the Celts invade York, that the backdrop was a bit muddy. The game will have players navigate through from the streets of Rome, York, the wilderness, and the haunted swamps. The map themselves, however beautiful, was very linear and straightforward, without many large open areas in physics, except for a few breakable pots here and there, and some interactions. Most of the time, players will navigate straight forward to accomplish the task of killing enemies or completing certain events to progress in the game. There are hidden scrolls and vistas riddled throughout the game that can be found. The gameplay itself is a hack-and-slash style game that has some great ideas implemented that needed more work. As Marius, players are able to melee, perform execution moves, go into focus mode, break enemies' defense, use range pila, roll, and defend against attack. And with this in mind, attacks can vary in light or heavy and chain up to combos, which adds up to the system's points and rating. Marius can perform shield hits and precise, perfect parries to stun enemies that are blocking or dodging, in order to land and juggle them with hits before a cursor appears on top of them to perform an execution, if one chooses to do so or not. Only up to 2 enemies at a time may be executed at one time, which is quite flashy. Focus mode is like an eagle vision mode that slows down enemies for a limited time, where Marius can land on as many hits as possible, disregarding the enemy's blocking. During the combat, players are also able to see certain color flash on enemies. Blue for attack, gold for shield attacks, are mostly seen during executions, while enemies at times perform red attacks, which requires precise blocking. These are the 3 color flashes seen during the combat. The execution flash button sequence does not punish the players much if one performs the wrong combination during these flashes. Pressing any buttons during the flashes will continue the execution and doesn't cause a backlash to health of any kind or blocks from the enemies of any sort, but more of a point deduction and rating label. The interface that shows this appears on the top left side of the screen, spamming constantly, and sometimes ruin the immersion of the game, making it feel very arcadey, with no way to turn it off. The only time players are punished is on the accuracy of blocking and during the combat's red flashes from enemies, in which case, if not prevented, enemies will deal much more damage to the players. The tedious gameplay is because of the way the game is presented, as one goes through the linear map repeating all these same combos in a rhythmical pattern. The bosses were a bit of a lackluster because they adhere to the system. It's mostly the same combos being performed to fight them, with some precise blocks thrown in, and didn't present much of a challenge even on the harder difficulties or variety. The enemy AI is also lacking, as all they do is surround the players and throw in sneak hits now and then, but no problem, since with the perk system, you're literally overpowered and constantly healing very easily. During the gameplay battle, player can switch between perks that will benefit them before killing an enemy. There's the health regeneration perks that heals them, the damage amplification, focus recovery, and XP multiplication perk. The varieties of enemies are mostly those that either carry a single weapon without a shield, which are really squishy, shielded enemies that require more hits from Maria's own shield attack to stun, larger enemy varieties which are harder to hit and stun, and twin weapon enemies. Most of the time they all look the same or have different skins and lack variety in attack style because the pattern was very predictable. The stat system in the game is also lacking in Bear. The system lets players use points called Valor gained from the combo system to invest a little more stats on their health, focus, damage, and executions. Gold is the alternative earned through the online play of the game that can be used for the upgrades. The upgrades go through truly quick and don't offer much variety, so in the end it's seriously easy to max everything out without a tree. There are no varieties of weapons, armor, moves, or combo lists in the single player of the game. During certain times in the game, other gameplay mechanics will have Marius call in the Legion to have him go through enemy range attack, make some decision of defense with them. Other times, Marius will have to use range attacks or sit back on a ballista shooting at enemies. There is a multiplayer system for the game in place which offers a variety of play against enemies in an arena style combat. Players can attempt these events solo or with a partner and use certain boosters, aesthetic looks, assorted armors, leveling up through the online tier system. The multiplayer is fun for a bit and then over time loses its replay value. Overall, this is the only replay the game offers for multiplayer, or one can go back and replay the game as a legendary hard mode, which opens up after completing the game once and earn the highest multiplayer scores to rank up in the leaderboards. The game can be completed in approximately 6 to 7 hours, thus it is a very short game. The control default layout to the game is playable with keyboard and mouse or with a gamepad, although the configuration itself lacks key bindings and the only options are pretty layouts that are in place. It's not that bad. It takes a bit of time to get used to. The graphic settings, however, have a variety of options the player can take advantage of to find the best performance from their rigs. The game needs a bit of work and optimization since I noticed that some of the FPS are not always constant 60 or above, and at some location it took a dip here and there depending on the specs. The cutscenes, however, go above the 60 FPS anywhere from the 100 and up. Overall guys, I had a great time with the game. It was fun to play. It looked great on the PC version. The emotion really brings out a lot of the characters, and there were really great concepts in this game. However, every great game has its fair share of con. In this case, the maps were very linear, like I said before. The linearity kind of kills the immersion a bit because you're just going straight forward. Not only that, but the maps were very static. You can't really damage things here and there, except for a few pods for no reason. So it felt like a really good looking game that you can't touch. Another thing is the gameplay of the game. The gameplay is very lacking due to the enemies being very predictable. It's very arithmetical with pattern attacks that you can easily do. And then during the middle of the game, I stopped caring about what button I pressed during the color-coded flashes because I didn't care about the leaderboards. And if I wanted to score on the leaderboards, it didn't matter. People were hacking it, so I stopped caring about that as much. The other thing is that the stats tree lacked customization. There wasn't a tree. You can't edit your armor or change, anything else such as your weapons. You use the same sword and board throughout the game. And most of the execution, as you see it over and over again, they were cool at first, but then they get really repetitive since they lack variety too. So overall, it's a fun game to play, guys. Don't take my opinion to heart. Play the game for yourself. I know a lot of people out there enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. It's a fun game to play. That is my review of Ryse, Son of Rome. Thanks for watching, guys, and remember to game on. Question, will there ever be that one decent alien game? This is as close as it gets. Gamers, welcome back. Today we're going to review Middle Earth, Shadows of Mordor. So Shadows of Mordor